Hello friends, I welcome you all for the first online session of paper number 8 of semester 5th of BA Part 3. At the outset, I take this opportunity to congratulate you all for choosing English as a special subject at BA 3rd. As all of you know, that world and nation is facing a fatal strike of a pandemic. Every venture of mankind is hampered, and so is the academics. So, in order to minimize this hamper, the college authorities have decided to conduct the online lectures. So, I am dealing with one and a half paper of BA Part 3 Special English. One is a poetry, and second is a drama. In this session, let us begin with a poetry. In this session, we will get acquainted with the new syllabus which is implemented from June 2020. So this is the first year of this syllabus. But if you compare the old and new syllabus, you will understand that there is a slight difference in the prescribed text. Otherwise, the uh, general topics are the similar one. In the last year also we learned the same, that Elizabethan poetry, metaphysical poetry and romantic poetry. Only the texts are different, otherwise the general topics are the same. So let us begin with this the new syllabus of this paper. So why should we learn this paper? This is the first question that we should answer first. So there are the course objectives. What are they? See, to make students engaged and curious readers of a poetry. So this is in fact a challenge in this digital age, to make the students curious about the literature. So this paper and the prescribed texts will genuinely try to encourage you to read more about English poetry. So that is one of the objectives of this paper. Second, to introduce students to poetry from various cultures and traditions. This is in fact a new component to this particular paper. Before June 2020, you can see the syllabus, we were exclusively focusing on British literatures, British literature in English. We are not focusing, or we are not considering the poets from different nations. But from this year, instead of understanding poetry and understanding only British poetry, we have incorporated different poets from different cultures and different traditions. So from these poets, from these poetry, we are able to understand their poetry and their culture. The third objective is to make students understand that poetry gives intellectual, moral and linguistic pleasure. Of course, yes, poetry always gives us an aesthetic pleasure that we can't get it from anywhere else in the world. So we try to understand, as a student of literature, as a student of literary criticism, we try to understand that how we can take the aesthetic pleasure of a poetry. So this paper will teach you how to take, or how to look at poetry for its aesthetic pleasure. Last objective, to make students hear and read poems aloud and to memorize lines. You can see, when we were speaking in English, when we were speaking in Marathi, when we were speaking in Hindi, you can see that when we use the lines of the poems, the speech that we were delivering becomes immediately a very influential one. It gives and it imprints influence on the listeners. So that is also one of the objective of this course, that let you memorize certain poems that you can use when you are communicating with others and make your speech more attractive and impressive. Then the course outcome. What we will gain after completing this course? That is a course outcomes. So let us see these course outcomes. Students will be able to trace the development of the poetry in English from the days of Shakespeare to the contemporary India. So you can see that the vast span of a poetry is covered in this new syllabus from Shakespeare to the contemporary period. You can come across different poets, different poems from different lyrical types, from different culture, different tradition, and you will try to understand, or you will come to you will able to trace the development of the poetry. That is also one of the very important outcome of this new syllabus. Then students will be able to appreciate and analyze the poems properly. This is also very important thing, that how to analyze a poetry or how to read it. That is a very important thing that we should learn in this syllabus. Reading a poetry, as a literary student, reading a poetry means not just read it for the purpose of reading, but reading it for the aesthetic pleasure is important. So this paper will teach you, this paper, after completing this paper, you will understand that how to read poetry for the aesthetic pleasure, how to analyze it, how to think about a language, how to think about the rhymes, how to think about rhythms. So when we do all these things, when we analyze all these things, we came across a meaning of the poem, and this meaning not only teach you something, but it also gives you an aesthetic pleasure. So this is also one of the very important outcome of this course, that you will understand how to analyze the poem. Then students will have a fairly comprehensive view of the Western and Eastern poetic tradition. This is very important thing, that we are supposed to understand both Western and Eastern tradition. Many times before implementing this new syllabus, or even in the last decades, when you look at the syllabus, you can understand that we were only focusing on the Western literary enterprises. We were not considering the Eastern one, but or what we were doing, we were teaching them in a special papers. So if the students go opt a Western paper, he will not understand what exactly is in the Eastern poetic tradition. So instead of doing this separation, as the title of the paper is English poetry, it it does not mean that English poetry means British poetry, but English poetry means poetry written in a English language. So it may be from Western literary tradition, or it may be from a Eastern literary tradition. So both are important things. Then and Eastern poetic tradition, and they will be able to relate it to various literary moments. This is also very important thing. When we read a literary text, when we read a poetry, when we read a drama, even a novel, even a short story, we should be able to relate it within literary tradition. You can understand that when we think about a poetry, when we think about a drama, uh, we can group it. When we are saying that it is an Elizabethan poetry, it means that there are certain poets that we can categorize under Elizabethan period, Elizabethan poetry. And this title, Elizabethan poetry, is not just a indication of a chronology of a time, but it also indicates a thematic grouping of the literature. And when we think about the thematic grouping of literature, you can see that there are several similarities in them. Why we found the similarities in them? Because though Poets are different, novelists are different, they are different individuals from different regions. They are responding to the scenario, social, cultural, economic scenario, and that is a singular. So all these poets, they were responding to a singular kind of socio-cultural phenomena, and as a result of that, you can see that there are certain similarities in their works. And as there are certain similarities in their work, as a literary students or as a literary critics, we can group them, we can group them in a particular title, in a particular rubric. As a, for example, Elizabethan poetry, for example metaphysical poetry, for example romantic poetry. You can see that the poets writing under a romantic poetry, maybe from different region, you can see that they were responding to a singular socio-cultural phenomena. And for that matter, or for that, you can see that there are certain similarities in their literary works. So we should able to relate his poetry to a particular literary movement. And when we understand this poetry in a particular, in the context of a particular literary movement, you can understand, we understand the poetry more clearly. Or there are several other aspects, there are several other angles uh, becomes visible, which otherwise may be uh, hidden or may be uncovered. So the students will relate all this poetry that we are supposed to learn in this paper to a various literary moments. Third one, students will have an insight into poetry, and they will be able to make a lively and interesting reading. So we are not only the students of literature, understand that we are also the appreciator of the literature. And this paper, when we are reading this paper, reading the poems that are prescribed to this paper, you can understand that we are able to understand how to appreciate the art, how to appreciate the art of a poetry. So these are the outcomes of the this new syllabus. So after outcome and after objective and outcome, let us see actual syllabus. So this is module number 1. This is a topic for background reading. In the last syllabus, we keep the rubric as a general topic, but in this paper, in this syllabus, we are supposed to call it as a background reading. So these, there are three topics for background reading. In module 1, there are three subtopics. One is Elizabethan poetry, second is a metaphysical poetry, and third is a romantic poetry. We are supposed to understand Elizabethan poetry for its characteristics, major poets writing in it, poems that are important in Elizabethan poetry. Similar is the thing with the metaphysical poetry, similar is with the romantic poetry. And for this module, we are supposed to devote 15 lectures. So each subtopic we have to give a 5 lectures. So we will deal Elizabethan poetry in a 5 lectures. In one, we will deal with a socio-cultural background of Elizabethan poetry. In second, we will deal with definition or rubric, definition of the rubric of Elizabethan poetry. Third, in which we will see about the characteristics of Elizabethan poetry. Fourth, we will think about the major poets of Elizabethan poetry. In the fifth, we will review and conduct a small text or like that thing in the fifth lecture. So each topic, for each subtopic, we are supposed to deal with, we are supposed to deal for the 5 lectures, deal in a 5 lectures. So as you can see that we are not only the students going only for the knowledge, we are also supposed to understand the topics, we are also supposed to understand this new syllabus from an examination point of view. And when we were going towards the examination point of view, we should think about uh, the weightage that is given to the topic into the actual syllabus. So you can see that this is a question paper pattern I have pasted here for your better understanding. See the question number 2, this module number 1, the question in a question paper will be in question number 2, answer the following questions in about 250 or 300 words. And this topic should this question should be set on module number 1. Here also you can see there is or A or B. And then question number 4, this is question number 2 is for 10 marks. Then question number 4, that is a write short notes in about 100 and 150 words each, 3 out of 4. And this 2 be set on module 1. So if you see 2 means if you are supposed to write 3 means 3 into 4, that is 12, means 6 marks here in question number 4 and 10 marks in question number 2. So this module number 1 is in the question paper, this module number 1 is given for a 16 marks weightage. So you can understand that this module is very important. Besides this weightage in a question paper, you can understand that all these three topics, Elizabethan poetry, metaphysical poetry and romantic poetry, to understand the general topic is very important to understand the prescribed poetry, because there are again three modules in this paper. We are supposed to learn four modules. First module is a general topic, second module is a group of poets, group of poems that is written under Elizabethan poetry, third is a metaphysical poems, and fourth module is a romantic poems. So understanding this module, that is a general topic, are very important to understand the prescribed text uh, in the upcoming modules. As I told you, this is module number 2, that is again selections from Elizabethan poetry. So in this uh, module, we are supposed to read three poems, that is Edmund Spenser's Sweet Warrior, then Sir Philip Sidney's Sonnet to the Moon, and William Shakespeare's Full Many a Glorious Morning. Understand that when you read module number 1 and subtopic 1, that is Elizabethan poetry, uh, here in this module number 2, you can understand, you can relate this all this poetry with the Elizabethan poetry general topic we have read. So that learning or that discussion will be helpful for us to understand all these poems. Again, another thing is that all these three poems are the sonnets. Sonnet is a lyrical type. So here we are also again supposed to understand a sonnet as a lyrical type. Here also each poem, we get a 5 lectures for each poem, each topic. In that we will understand life and works of Edmund Spenser, what is sonnet, then the actual poems, rhyme, rhythms, then thematic concern, and all these things we are supposed to. Again, see in question number 1, when we realize this unit for its weightage in question paper pattern, you can see question number 1A, 4 multiple choice questions with 4 alternatives, 4 marks. Answer the following questions in one word, one phrase, one sentence, again 4 marks. If we consider that one question is set in one uh, that is question number 1A, and one question is set in question number 1B. So 2 marks in question number 1 for this module. Then question number 3, that is also very important. Here answer the following questions in about 250 and 300 words. It is for 10 marks. There is again A or B to be set on module number 2, 3 and 4. That is the poems prescribed to you. So here also, if we consider one question, here also you can understand that we have a 10 marks. Then question number 4, there are short notes, 3 out of 4. Similarly, if one we consider, there also we get a 3 marks. So 3 plus 10 plus 2. So this is the weightage of this module number 2 in a question paper. Then module number 3, selections from metaphysical poetry. In selection from metaphysical poetry, you can see we are supposed to learn 3 poems. Again, the similar kind of pattern, 5 lectures were allotted to one topic, that is the Sun Rising by John Donne, the Retreat by Henry Wagon, and the Caller by George Herbert. So in metaphysical poetry we are supposed to learn 3, and the similar kind of thing, or similar kind of uh, uh, weightage is given into the module number 3. Then module number 4, selections for romantic poetry. Selections from romantic poetry. Here also we are supposed to learn William Wordsworth's My Heart Leaps Up, S.T. Coleridge's The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, Onzamindas by P.B. Shelley, When We Two Parted by Lord Byron. The same thing we are supposed to give for this module 50 lectures, and accordingly we will divide it into 4. Similar kind of question paper weightage is given to this particular module. So this is the syllabus. Syllabus is very simple one, it is not very complex one. The question paper pattern is also very simple one, and you can see that when we look at a glance of a question paper pattern, you can understand the easiness of the subject, easiness of the paper. The question paper that you are supposed to appear in your semester system, your semester examination, it is for 40 marks, and accordingly question number 1, 2, 3 and 4, you can see it is in front of you that you are supposed to answer these questions. In this semester 5th, there is also 10 marks for internal evaluation, and here we are supposed to conduct a student seminar. So uh, I will give you a topic and you are supposed to prepare a seminar on that. So after when you present a seminar, I will observe you and I will give you a mark. So this is a question paper pattern of the new syllabus. You can see that there is no difference between there is not a grave difference or large difference between the previous syllabus and the new syllabus. There are certain texts, they were replaced, new text were introduced, general topics are the same, question paper pattern is the same, evaluation methodology is the same. So many times we feel that the syllabus is new, it may be difficult for us to tackle. The notes are available on it, and we are also going to conduct lectures on each and every topic. So this is not a very difficult one, this is not a very complex one to deal with. Before finishing this lecture, we will see at a glance. I am not going into the details of all these things, but just to understand that, just we should keep in our mind that how to analyze a poetry. When we think, when we read about a poetry, we should read about all these things. So this is a mind map, in fact, about analyzing a poetry. So we will read only the titles that is given in this mind map. See, analyzing poetry, language is important, structure is important, tone of the poetry is important, thematic concern, what ideas, subjects are the poet trying to convey is important, imagery is important, metaphor, simile, personification, we should think about it. Narrative stance is who is the speaker of the poem, that is also very important. Then punctuation marks, you can see that punctuation mark I have mentioned that it is differently, it can, you can understand it, you can even uh, take it under the language, but I have mentioned it differently because it also gives, it also adds a meaning to the literary meaning to the poem, or it has a potential to change the meaning of the poetry. Then title and rhyme scheme, all these things we are supposed to understand when we are reading a metaphysical poetry, a Elizabethan poetry, or a romantic poetry. We are supposed to understand a poem from all these perspectives. We are supposed to understand the rhyme scheme, we are supposed to understand language, we are supposed to understand thematic concern, we are supposed to understand tone, we are supposed to understand structure, we should understand what is the significance of title, punctuation mark, imagery, and all these things we are supposed to understand. So we will stop here and continue the same in the next session. From the next session onward, we will begin with Elizabethan poetry. That will be the part first of my lecture, and we will deal with historical, social, cultural background of Elizabethan poetry. Thank you.